Go. Becky, this is back to back because we were talking about you on the DTC show. You're just
Yeah,
everywhere.
I feel like I'm in the limelight. I'm getting my 15 minutes of fame right now for sure.
Finally, worthwhile.
Finally, I've had some other ones. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah,
Amazing.
I had the Apple goggles,
The Vision Pros, yeah.
the Vision Pros. I made a
Yeah.
video about it, and it had like 6 million views on TikTok. So I'm not new to this, but yeah.
Act like you've been here before, kind of
Wow.
stuff. Amazing. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another seminar series, a brainchild of our fearless leader. Let's go around the horn. First, we'll start with you, Becky, Archit, and then Boss Man. You guys want to just give a quick little intro to let the people know? And the discussion today is going to be pretty heavily around AI. So the new world of creative, experimenting with AI and advertising. And Becky and Archit have a really cool story. And then, as always, comment. We're looking in the chat, so this doesn't need to be a lecture. We can interject whenever, and we'd love to answer your questions. But Becky, why don't you kick us off with kind of a little elevator pitch?
Sure. Okay. So my name is Becky Litvintchouk, but Litvin is the short version of it. It's impossible to say. But yeah, so my background is in marketing. I was a creative director at an agency for a couple of years. And then in November 2022, the agency just shut down overnight. And I was kind of like looking into what my next journey is going to be. I knew that I loved anything that was consumer related. I loved marketing and I loved tech. And then I remember I was on my way back from Art Basel. It was the end of November 2022. And that's exactly when ChatGPT was released. I remember I was on the flight and I was like, oh, what is this? And it was like all the buzz on Twitter. And I just started playing around with it. I was like, okay, this is going to change the game for me. Like, there's so much that I didn't think that I would have been able to do previously, just kind of being an entrepreneur and doing a lot of things on my own. It felt very just exhausted just to even think about starting anything on my own. But then when I discovered ChatGPT, I just went down the AI rabbit hole. I decided to launch my own direct-to-consumer brand, Get Dirty, which is this really amazing, innovative product. I can get into it eventually, but yeah, the point is that I use AI on a daily basis right now in my startup. I use it all the time, and I would say I definitely know how to nerd out to it.
I love it. I love it. Amazing. Get Dirty. Yeah, we got to jam in New York, and your story is just really cool. So we'll get into that a little more and into the brand, Get Dirty. But first, Archit, the best dressed man on the pod. Tell us, give us your story.
Not sure about that, but yeah, I'm Archit. I am the CEO of Reach Digital. Before this, I worked at Meta for about 3 years with brands like Supergoop, Rhone Apparel, Ollie Vitamins, just a bunch of like exciting D2C predominant folks. And left in 2020 to start Reach Digital. We're a performance marketing and growth initiatives agency. We do user acquisition for D2C brands, primarily creative, ads optimization, doing a lot of growth initiatives like TikTok Shop. And my interest in AI has mostly come from finding ways to increase productivity and just give us an edge against more established agencies, give our clients an edge against more established brands in their space. So that's kind of how and why I'm here.
Amazing. My boss, probably the best memer in the company, and actually low-key hilarious. If you want a super deep dive, we actually did on our sister show, Equation of Excellence. He was nice enough to grace us with our presence when we were out in Vegas. So if you want a deep dive, but for now, we'll give him a little 60-second plug. Go ahead, my man.
Yeah, I guess all I do on the weekends and the nights nowadays is try to improve my meme game. And then by day, I'm trying my best to keep Rubba under control at FERMÁT. We help marketers run one-to-one stores against their campaigns. So basically having like the ideal funnel against any piece of content that you put out there. And right now, I would say the way we think about AI is both like trad AI and gen AI. So like traditional AI, I mean, Archit knows this, but like Meta is like the king of traditional AI,
Yep.
right? So it's like, how do you show the right ad to the right person? For us, that's like how do you deterministically create the right store for the right person? Today, human in the loop, tomorrow, purely machine led. And then on the generative side, the thing that we're super excited about is, I mean, it sounds trite to say, but content of every format, whether that's video, imagery, what are the words that you use? Like,
Yep.
what advertorials are very effective? Why are they effective? What are the types of content that you can put in there? How do you test that very quickly? And so like that's on the generative side. What I would say is like the set of things that we're most excited about.
I love it. I love it. Why don't we dive in? So let's again start with you, Becky. Kind of, why did you start playing around with AI? And then obviously we'd be remiss not to talk about the Get Dirty story that you also went viral for. So give us kind of why you got started in AI, how you use it, and then tell us about the story that not only drove a lot of business impact for you guys, but was also a really interesting thought experiment to where kind of UGC is headed.
Yeah, sure. So I always knew that even as I was leaving the agency side, I really enjoyed the consumer part of it. So launching my own brand was always on the agenda. It was always part of the plan. It was just waiting for the right time, the right product, just the right positioning. At the same time, simultaneously, AI was just starting to become a thing, and I was using it a lot to take a lot of the menial tasks off of me. So anytime I needed to write pitch decks, anytime that I needed to like just, sometimes it was just like the economics of things, like even drafting contracts with my manufacturer. Like I just put everything through AI, which is something that I would have had to pay a lot of money for if I had like find somebody on LinkedIn or Fiverr or whatever to do it. It just would have compounded, and it would have been a lot to manage and oversee. And like this, I can just like log on to this thing, talk to it like a person, tell like, and it just spits back. And obviously, you have to do your own due diligence, but like it was really, really good. And I was like, I can actually do this. I can start my own company with the help of AI and not feel overwhelmed, like I was saying before. So like I said, right place, right time. I met this manufacturer that was making this really highly innovative product for firefighters. And it was just this like really extra large full body wipe that like firefighters, when they walk out of a fire, they need to remove the carcinogens off their skin immediately. So like they can't play around with the body wipe that they use. And I was like, this is an amazing formulation. I was using it because I was commuting every day to the city. I live by Long Beach. I don't know, it's like about 40-minute commute. So I was like it was my lifestyle. And I just traveled a lot for work all the time. And I was like, I was using it for myself. And they say like the best businesses come from like solving your own problem. And I really saw a market for personal hygiene on the go. And because it's such a good product, we were able to have gynecologists on board. And because it's so antibacterial, we were able to have it approved as a UTI preventative wipe. So now we have one for men and women with different pH balances. And we're working on another product that's under oral hygiene. So it's a really exciting brand. We're innovating in a new space. Now launching a product online as a new brand, I'm sure you guys know, Meta has been really difficult for new brands. Like it's specifically for new brands, it doesn't matter how amazing your product is. A brand that's just not known is just going to fight a massive uphill battle. And I learned that the hard way initially during launch by putting a lot of money into Meta. And then I was like, okay, I need to start like cutting corners here. Like this is not scalable at all. Just the math wasn't a math thing basically. Yep. So I started just getting creative, and just like I didn't really talk about this so much, but I've been like constantly on top of like the new AI tools that like my Twitter feed is pretty new in DTC, but I'm like entrenched in the AI world on Twitter. So I would say like that's where I'm coming from more. So every time there was a new tool, also on TikTok, you could call me like an AI influencer. I've been constantly talking about it's crazy. I actually made a series on TikTok called AI for ADHD that's gone like mad viral. I've had multiple viral videos. I talked about, I'm a big Claude proposal. I don't get paid from Claude, but I love Claude. So, I just talk a lot about AI. I'm really up to date with all like the latest tools, and I came across this video. Somebody was promoting it. I think it was a promoted video. It was hard to come by. I had to go on YouTube. It wasn't like just right there on Twitter, but it looked like a really good software. So I tried it out for myself. I paid them. It was called Arc Ads. I paid them. I was just at the like throwing spaghetti against the wall. This wasn't like a serious type of situation. I was like, let's see what we could do with this. And then as it was like downloading, I was like, this is actually good. Like, this is actually good for AI. Like I said, I've tried a lot of different tools, and I was like, this is probably one of the more impressive ones that I've tried. So I downloaded it to kind of just like share it with like AI DTC Twitter, and it unexpectedly blew up. Thankfully, my brand name was in there, and it ended up being like just a crazy turn of events where, because it went so viral, the likeness of the AI model reached out to me. And we've been working together ever since. I hired her. She's great. She does a lot of UGC content for me, and I'm able to control it and make it look more realistic.
Yeah.
So it's actually been it's been a great situation for me all in all.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So I was curious, do you think that it is just a consequence of being so experimental and just putting things out there that led to these moments? Like if you were to like tell somebody else like who's starting to touch AI, like what is the thing to do? It like my meta learning from you from sharing that was just like, I mean, I hate to use these words, but I'm going to use them. Like, just be in the arena and just like try a bunch of things. I'm like, now I'm like showing what podcasts I listen to by like saying these words.
That's below my line.
but like it feels like that. It feels like that. It's just like, you're like, you didn't expect any one particular thing to work, but you're just like trying, and you're like, wow, this one is amazing. I'm just going to put it out there, and then you had this big moment.
I think anyone that's like really entrenched in AI understands that we are in the phase of throwing spaghetti against the wall with AI and experimenting with it a lot and testing it a lot. And if you don't get really good at knowing how to experiment with it, then AI just seems bad, because it all comes down to how well you know how to prompt it. And I actually made this like the second follow-up video to that viral video where I was like, the reason why it looks good, because I know my brand and I know the kind of mannerisms that my brand needs, and I know how to have the model speak in a certain way, and I know that there's ways to get longer pauses. There's little hacks. I do my research. So yes, it looked better than somebody who's just trying it for the first time, for sure. It's a combination of spending a lot of time being interested in AI and then executing.
I love it. And so for people that weren't totally following along, the too long didn't read is Becky found this really cool software that people will sell their likeness, basically their look, and then AI will essentially speak for them using a script, etc. This went super viral for Becky, had a ton of business impact. And then Becky was actually reached out to by the person that the likeness was based off of, and now actually works with that person along with the AI software. It's the craziest, coolest, wackiest story. Go find it on the TikToks. We'll drop some links in the show notes. Archit, so that's from the brand side. So from the agency side, Archit, how are you guys leveraging AI? What is the biggest kind of wins that you have found? And then also, has there been any drawbacks, or have you felt like the exploration has been actually to a detriment, or has it all been sunshine and roses?
Yeah, totally. So I guess my personal way of getting started was pretty similar to Becky's in a weird roundabout way. We were negotiating with a brand that was, a nine-figure brand. They had a bunch of really specific terms and verbiage they wanted to include. And I kind of had this moment where I was like, should I pay $1,000 an hour to go talk to a lawyer, or can I just get some help deciphering what these terms mean?
Yep.
And then come back to them with something that sounds like a lawyer wrote it. And that's kind of where I first started using some of these tools. So I think by personality, I'm like, a early adopter or innovator type or whatever that is, and like the the spectrum of things. So I was pretty fine rolling the dice and saying, maybe this isn't totally how a lawyer would actually do it, but it'll be close enough for us. So that's kind of how I got started. And then from the agency side, I guess my question to my team was sort of like, okay, looking at like a future world where AI is being used for ad creative, take that to its natural end. Like, what does that mean? Well, it means there's going to be much more volume of content, for one. So let's even just start there. So then my question to the team is like, how do we 5x our creative output without increasing costs and without sacrificing the quality of like services rendered? So if you have a team of 5 designers, and right now each designer, just making up numbers, is producing 20 ads a week, how do we get that to 100 ads per week in a way that we can deliver like a better service, higher volume of creative for lower cost than any of our competitors? And as a service provider, like that's sort of my fueling vision, is like best service at the lowest cost, or highest value, or however you want to talk about that. So that thought experiment sort of led us down, well, the answer is not to hire a bunch of people. The answer is probably to find ways to increase productivity per existing employee. And from there, like myself and a video editor just started playing around with some of these tools. And our biggest wins have not been like the AI avatars. I think that is something that I'm still testing and maybe even a little bit dubious of. I see some of the success, and I'm not sure that we can totally replicate that at scale. But it's been ways to just like 2x or 3x productivity. So we're not at that like 5x level yet, but at least we're starting to get there, and we're able to quickly increase the like rate of delivery on new creative through Claude and like some of these other tools that we can talk through.
Yeah, I love that. I see that a lot, where it depends on where it fits into your workflow. But scripting is actually a very time-intensive thing. And I found that a lot of people are using it to get to the 80-90%, and then they'll put another human in the loop to take it across. And I feel like that's where I've seen the biggest gains, where either ideating with it, or again getting it to a place that then you can curate, and almost like a tastemaker, right? Where you build it and then the human can taste make. And then also to Becky's point, bringing it in-house. The Llama model is actually getting really interesting, Llama 3. But these AIs don't have a very good memory. And so it's hard, because you're basically just generating net new versus being able to say, hey, just change this thing or just change that thing. And those little tweaks and nuances, I'm sure they're coming down the pike, but haven't been there yet. Rashid, so from the SaaS side of it, and just org operations, you're the CEO, you're the co-founder, you're essentially the parent of the whole company, where everybody comes and yells at you if Susie threw a cookie at Billy or whatever. How are you leveraging AI in the company? How are you thinking about it for the product, for the business, for all the other founders out there? Where do you see the biggest upside?
Yeah, I think actually Archit said something that I think is like actually Becky's like building the company in this way, which is like using AI to think about your company as, how do you create a massive leverage to your company? And so like, Becky, I mean, you tell me if I'm hearing you correctly, but it sounds like you're like, it actually enabled you to be a founder, because you're like, hey, all these things that otherwise would have cost me either a lot of time or a lot of money, it's like, I can just get leverage now, and I don't have to like worry about it. And for Archit, it's like this 5x question. For SaaS companies, there's this funny line that I heard, which is basically true. It used to be the case that SaaS companies were like, at the front they looked like software, and at the back they were actually services. And then
that's exactly right.
Now it's flipped, where AI gives you the ability to like in the front do services and in the back use software. And I actually think that is like, that framing has like completely like changed how I think about like what a good software company looks like. Where like Archit, I mean, a different way of saying what Archit is saying is like, he can run a very high margin business that is still very good in the output that it provides, right? Like you don't have to sacrifice quality for margin, which as a service provider, you used to have to do.
Yes.
And so if you can run a software company that feels like a service, but is actually just software, or run a D2C brand, which is like, you know, you get even more leverage on your people. That's exactly how I think about it for SaaS, is like, hey, how do I provide things that feel like it is service, but actually it's like mostly software doing all of the lift. So that's like my like meta answer to your question. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's spot on. Before I came on to FERMÁT full time, I was doing some consulting, and I have a bunch of frameworks and blah blah blah. And I put in this framework using Chat GPT, and it basically spit out in maybe 30 minutes annual marketing plan for this company that I was consulting for. And they're like, was it perfect? No, but it gave me enough of the building blocks to then again be that tastemaker. And then, but to your point, Rashid, like that would have normally taken me a month or something like that, et cetera, versus this took me, you know, an hour on the front end of that kind of measure twice, cut once type of thing. But then once I got this deliverable, all it was shaping and pitching. And I think that is a huge unlock for a lot of services businesses, even when, again, shameless plug on the DTC show, actually, when we were talking about Get Dirty, Jess was showing us all these AI songs that he made. And if I would have hired Jess of Hire Fire Team for a jingle or something like that, none of them really missed. And so it's just this really interesting place of like, the if you think, because I went to school for economics, and so if you think of things in terms of a value chain, the value chain is really starting to get discombobulated, because it used to be this ideating, and this thing like was a really big function of the outputs, but now you can kind of circumvent, and it's like it's almost like the time machine, right, where you can fold time and space and you can just go through the wormhole versus having to go travel across the whole thing. And so yeah, I think that's absolutely super spot on. Archit, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to you, Becky, and then Rashid, you'll go third. Where do you see AI going? Because right now it is in such an interesting inflection point, and the speed of innovation. Like, I don't know if you guys play along with Midjourney and all, but from when Midjourney started to now, and then even just Chat GPT with like if GTP 5's on the cusp. I don't know about you guys, but I can't really discern now from AI generated text to like human written text. It's getting to a place where the Turing test is absolutely passed for me, where I mean, I have no idea what's actually written and not written. So Archie, how do you see it unfolding just in the macro? And then how do you see it unfolding kind of on the agency side? Do you think that's going to make services less? Do you think that's going to make, to Rashid, it's going to unlock business efficiency, so your agency is actually going to be able to use time in those really valuable areas and more time in that strategy, that dialogue with your consumers, the research, like how are you feeling?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. Like one, as content goes to infinity online and it becomes
That's a good line.
easier to produce content, to your point, like taste matters the most.
Yep.
And that becomes like the nexus of like, value or whatever, is like, do you have the same taste as your audience? And are you able to like, essentially curation becomes like the task at hand as opposed to anything else, which I think is already happening today. So we're not like super far off. There's already insane amount of content, whether it's human made or AI made. So that's like one way I think about it. The second is sort of like that raises the floor for what is like minimally acceptable good content. But the ceiling is still like, as high as ever, if not higher, now that it's easier and there's more tools. And so great content is like, still the bar is very high. So that's like sort of how I'm starting to think about it. I think the other thing is like a lot of people push back and they're like, oh, consumers don't like AI content. I think similar to memes, like consumers will love and are loving AI content. And half my TikTok feed is like Guru Nanda oil pulling videos.
Yes. Dude,
AI
they're doing numbers.
Yeah, like germs and all this. It's so obviously not real, but like it's thrilling and like, kind of titillating. And so I think people love AI content, will get even more entranced by it and the opportunities it creates and how weird and like esoteric content can get. And it's just about, figuring out like where the puck is going and like skating there in advance, and content will get weirder and more niche and like just all the ways the internet naturally devolves over time will just be accelerated. So I'm personally excited to see how that unfolds. And then I think from the agency side, I think again, like when the floor goes up, it's harder to compete at a base level. If you're like, if your big value is cost, you're probably not well poised to succeed in that environment because cost
Very
goes
well said.
if your big value is we get the best outcomes, like there's still going to be a place for that. And so to me, it's like, how do we use these tools to create better outcomes? And I talk to brands now that run AI ads. They're running 100 plus ads a month. They're testing 100 plus ads a month at $100 to create a new asset. So it's like that's the floor. They still need better quality assets, and they'll pay more for better quality assets. How do we hit the ceiling? So that's sort of how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, no, that's well said. What about
Archit,
you,
can
Becky?
I?
Oh, go ahead,
Oh.
Richard. No,
Oh,
follow
I
on.
was just going to bat something. I was just going to bat something with Archit about this like raising of the floor thing. So roughly, at least for me, the way I've been interacting with it is like AI gives you like, I mean, it's taking an average of everything on the internet and so producing like an app. So, if like all of a sudden the bottom half is now at the median, right? I mean, like imperfect analogy, but like, let's just say like, hey, you're below average, which like half the people are below average by definition. So it's like below average on writing. All of a sudden it's like, boop, you just like get placed at the 50th percentile.
Yes.
And then it does this thing of like, just like all good normal curves, it just like pushes the extreme out. That's like roughly been the way that I've been interacting with it. Cause it's like you and I are probably below average on like legal terms. That's why we use it for like contract review, right? Like that's like the best way to think about it, right? It's like, great, boop, we put ourselves at average. And now guess what? Like everybody else has to up their game. And so it's like, that's like roughly how I've been interacting with these tools is like why you get these outliers, but also why outlier outcomes cannot be produced by these tools. So like, and Becky, you tell me if this is fair or unfair, but I feel like you got an outlier outcome with like people being astonished that video was produced by AI because of the amount of knowledge you had in order to produce the video the way that you did. Like, I don't think that the average person interacting with a model could produce a video of that style.
So the way I see it in terms of the brand side, like in D2C, to launch a brand today, you need so much volume of assets and content. It's volume and velocity, and you also need it fast. Like you need to test. Like when you're building a D2C brand, speed is everything. You just want to test the product. You want to get there into as many hands as possible, so you can generate enough revenue to take your brand to the next level. Like you need to get past that first phase of testing the market. You need to get your messaging down right away because everything has gotten so much more expensive to test. So basically the way I see it as a brand is that like this is not going to replace my higher level top of the funnel. Like I'm not going to use an AI video to try to like, do like an awareness type of like a brand awareness influencer campaign or something like that. Like that would be obvious, it would be cringy, it wouldn't look good, right? But but then when we're just focused on like messaging and we just want to say like what's converting, like just let me know if this works so I can iterate it in literally like 7 hours. So it's as a brand, the way I see AI growing is somebody like teams that are doing that like lower level, not in terms of skill at all, but like the messaging of like D2C, like the heavy like legwork of getting that brand lift off the ground, where you need to just test one after the other because like everybody says, at the end of the day, as a D2C brand, you're just one creative away from taking your brand to the next level. So you just want to get there faster. So that's where AI, I see it playing the most impactful role for new brands.
I think that's spot on personally, where I think it really de-risks a lot, where now you can take basically what you did, right? Like you found a likeness at a very, cost-effective cost. And then you've like, hey, this person is amazing. I'm just going to bring them in house. But like, if you would have just bet on that person right off the bat, there's so much risk in that, especially to your point, as you're building a beachhead, as you're doing that. And so that's where I find a ton of value with it, where it just de-risks a lot of the kind of pre-revenue, pre-output, pre-things where you can ideate. And it's a fantastic, like, if you know what you're talking about, you know what you're doing, it is a fantastic ideation tool. It's a fantastic place to get to an MVP, and then you can just use other things to augment it. Or, you know, once things are proven out, then you allocate resources towards it versus making these big blind bets where back in my agency world, my old life, I mean, we spent so much money on creative for brands, and half the time what we whipped up in Canva crushed the $50,000 brand video. And so it's just like, what if you could spread out that $50,000 into, now I have 10 bets of $5,000 or 50 bets of $1,000. And then when you find one that hits, you can kind of orient around that. I think that's a brilliant way to think of it.
Becky, I'm curious, does this make you feel like the modern marketer has to be even more experimental? Like, we're already pushing the envelope so much on like how experimental you need to be. And it's just like the stakes have just gone up by like an order of magnitude, or like in Archit's case, at least 3x.
Yeah, for sure. I think bigger brands are going to need to hire marketers that know how to at least like oversee or at least train smaller teams under them to be able to test creatives with AI, because you're already paying for the software. You're not going to, you know, like you're going to want a team that's doing it for you and doing it for you well and efficiently. So whether the marketer, you know, is the one that's actually knowledgeable in AI, I think it's more about like, are you AI forward? Do you see the value that AI could do for us in our business? And then like, what are you going to do about that? What kind of teams are you going to create, you know, for that like vertical of the business?
Yeah, no, that's super spot on. But Shib, you're always hip to the market, or you've corrected me multiple times, not the macro, but the micro. How do you see this changing the landscape of business? Because right now, I heard a great line where AI is not going to take your job. Somebody using AI is going to take your job. And I don't know if I necessarily see AI as this destructive kind of technology that some things are, where they just really wipe out. I feel like it's more of a multiplicative function. Do you think that ever changes, where you can basically know nothing and still get something of awesomeness? And then how do you foresee this impacting whether, you know, like Archit, where agencies have less headcount or brands spend less in the ecosystem to spend more on their businesses? Like, do you have any theses around how this is actually going to impact the micro?
I think that I think Becky to me is the inspiration for my thought process on this, which is like, it means there's more founders, which means, look, humans can't not work. Like, so I'm just going to start with that. Like, I think like human beings desire like feeling productive more than almost anything else. Like, it's just like a core driving force for most humans. And so I don't think we ever get to a place where there's just like less people employed. Like, I think that's highly unlikely. But I think like Becky is how I would think about it. It's like, you now have these tools that make it possible for new people to become founders, because the cost of becoming a founder has now gone down, right? And so it's like, Archit is not going to hire less people. He's going to have to like service more people like Becky as more and more businesses emerge. It's just that he's going to have to do it at a higher rate than he previously had to, and he's going to have to compete at a higher rate than he previously had to, because everybody else is going to be testing at a higher rate. And so like, I mean, Reba, I agree with exactly this framing of like, hey, it's actually not AI that's going to come and take your job. It's somebody who's using it, because you can just be so, I mean, I hate to use this word, but you can be so much more productive than other people who are not. But like overall, I think that where that magic comes from is in, like the stories like Becky's. Like it starts there, and like that is the thing that like you take that story and now you like multiply it by 1,000. And it's just like all of a sudden the economy looks different, right? And that's like sort of how business will change. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I got the producer in the heat telling me, or in my ear telling me I need more heat because I keep agreeing with you guys. But I think that's
I could
absolutely.
argue about things if you want.
There we
We could
go.
argue.
That's my New Yorker. There we go. Let's get it. No, I just feel like there is I think there's going to be a distortion and shift in the unit economics where Archit can now service 10 clients at X, where previously he serviced 10 clients at Y. So I think the unit economics are going to change for sure. And I also think what's interesting is, again, going back to those value vectors, I don't know if the same value vectors that got you to, 10 million, 100 million, whatever now are going to be the same value vectors in even 2 years. Just because, to your point, Rashib, like all the things that I used to suck at or that I suck at, I can now make them non-existential threats with the use of AI for basically nothing, or not nothing, but the cost structure is totally minimized compared to having to hire a lawyer, having to deal with all this stuff. I can get, I mean, the pure disruption play, right? 80% of the output for 20% of the price. And so I think that's going to get really interesting where, if I'm an up and comer, I am absolutely starting to get into framework, psychology, like all these kind of softer skills that were kind of poo-pooed earlier, because if I know what to ask it and how to frame it and how to prompt it, now I can get way past the person that is quote unquote an expert. There's a great book on essentially averages. And when you actually get to a number that's big enough of averages, they're actually more accurate than the expert. And so in this book, they had this person, they had, I forget what they call cow people, but people that like take care of cows and ask, hey, how much does that cow weigh? And then that person was actually way off compared to when they asked 1,000 people and averaged that average. And so I think that's what's really fascinating to me is I would not go into the same things that made great marketers in the past. I would try and plot a new pathway because creativity, how to experiment, the frameworks that you're using, the data you can get your hands on, like there's all these things that previously didn't matter because I don't need to understand the data. I don't need to understand said another way, I think the middleman is going to get cut out where I can just go and say, hey, I have the data. If I know the right questions to ask, then Chat GPT or whatever I'm using can then give me the answers I'm wanting. Versus previously, I either A, had to generate the expertise, which takes a lot of time and money, or B, hire somebody that already has those expertise. So that's what really excites me and fascinates me is that shift of value in that value chain. And you're going to have skills that previously were not actually very valuable become incredibly valuable now. And I also think the other thing, my other thesis around it is it's going to be so important to have a champion. I don't know if people are really going to care if it's AI generated, more so like if I have a champion behind the thing versus, oh, here's an output of the AI. And so again, in the agency world, in the brand world or whatever, where I have this champion behind me, that's kind of what we're talking about in the AI music. And so
yeah, I have a great jingle coming out for Get Dirty with that tool. What's it called?
Suno.
Yeah.
It's so good. I'm waiting to like put together the music video and release it. Like it's that good.
Oh my God. You want to know what's funny is like, I don't know how people look, I mean, there's like 2 brown men on this call, but Suno is actually just like listen in Hindi. And I'm like, where are all these like Hindi names coming from in like the DTC world, which is like kind of funny to me.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so Suno just means like listen in Hindi. Yeah.
Oh, it's Indian company.
No, I don't know. It's definitely not an Indian company. It's just a Hindi word. Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Funny. But I was actually going to add to what you were saying. I don't think that people are going to say the most successful D2C brands are the ones that know how to leverage AI. At the end of the day, the most successful brands are the ones that know what their consumers want and what know how to speak to their audiences. It's just like what happens from point A to point B, that in between and that testing period, that is just going to make it easier to just get that lift off the ground. Like at the end of the day, you're never going to be able to take away understand a deep insight onto consumer trends and consumer behavior. If you rely on AI for that, you're totally missing the mark on what AI does. AI is just learning, so you're not getting any original thought. And if you can't be original, if you can't be different and have a competitive edge, you're not going to make it. So some brands are going to learn it the hard way. But at the end of the day, AI is not what's going to take a brand from 0 to 100. It's just going to take a brand that's already going from 0 to 100 and help them like accelerate it.
I think, by the way, the one place where people have seen the quote unquote most disruption is in customer support, where they are actually, Sienna, for example, like Gorgeous has some stat around like how their agent features in the top 10 agents from a CSAT perspective across a large number of their customers. Anyway, there's like a lot of examples here. But I think that the only reason that's true is because the knowledge base pre-exists. And so like you're taking a pre-existing like knowledge base or understanding, Becky, like what you're saying, which is like the human intuition or the interaction with humans is like what has to feed it, and then yes, you can accelerate. So yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, and I also feel like there's just so much more room in AI that it's sometimes I think about like what's still not being done. Like if I find a lookalike brand, right, a brand that's speaking to the same like customer as I am, why can't there be like an AI tool that is gathering all the data, is just scraping all the data from their existing ads and their pixel, right? And just like kind of like an arbitrage, like maybe like selling it to me or something, like not in like a copycat kind of way, but in like this is what worked for them. Here is that, like I'm saying, there's just so much more room where we could test with other similar categories, similar brands. Like right now we're just talking about using AI on just like the DTC side, but there are so many like on the back end, like different ways that we can now with like Meta and advertising getting so much more competitive. Something that new brands could do. Like I'm just throwing it out there that there's just so much more that can be done. Like we're so early in it. That's basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. No notes. You guys are crushing it. First off, Becky, Archit, we've popped our numbers. We have 110 concurrents right now, which is incredible. And then if you guys are in the chat on LinkedIn,
is that real
YouTube,
concurrence or is that like the views?
Are you gonna go there? Are you gonna go there? Oh my gosh! Yeah, I told you guys. I told you he's funny. So Jesse had an interesting take. So if Ezra Klein's take, but I love his thoughts on it, that we're scared that AI is going to take our jobs because we've been trained so long to be like robots. And if anything, AI is going to allow us, make it more important for us to go back to double down on the parts that make us human and not robots. I think that's so well said. And that's exactly aligned with my thesis where, again, the tastemaker, these AI do not have taste. They don't have taste. The memory thing is getting solved a little bit, but there's still not going to be taste. And I think that there's going to be a huge resurgence in handmade goods, actually, because of this, because I think there's going to be a lot of things that you buy for utility that are just going to get commoditized, where it's just like, why am I going to pay so much more money if I want this? But if I want this beautiful handmade thing, I think that's actually going to be a place. So I'm actually pretty bullish on like the Etsy's of the world and things like that, where I was reading a stat where I believe 44% of the US GDP, which is 26% of the world GDP, which is absolutely insane, the biggest it's ever been, 44% is small businesses. And so small business is the lifeblood of the States. But I thought that was a really interesting take.
I totally agree. Can I chime in? And I feel like
of course,
in a world where it's easy to make anything, the thing that's the most valuable is something that took time and like
exactly right
craftsmanship and dedication. And so if I were doing it today, I would go hard on like US made hand goods, like leather craft or whatever it is.
That's exactly right.
So you want to know, so you guys probably know Alexa, who we have the privilege of working with. Her and I got into this heated debate about poems.
Oh, I was gonna go there. Okay, yeah. Well, let me set it up for you, and then do you let's ask. We'll go Becky for you first, Archit, and then Rashib. You can close out with your final thesis. But do you guys think that people care if if the content is generated by AI? And so what I mean by that is, so the thought experiment we were using, so again, my economics background, we have this fancy word called utility, which is basically like the positive outcome of the thing. Are you getting the thing that you want out of it? And if I am with my significant other and I have a notes tracker of like, okay, she is from X place, she likes Y thing, she is Z. I basically just have this dossier on her, and then I put it into Chat GPT, and I get this beautiful poem because I can't write really good prose in terms of poems. Or if I write a really shitty poem, and if I give her the poem that's written by Chat GPT and it elicits this incredible emotional response, she's so happy, blah, blah, blah. But then I tell her that AI wrote it, that's probably not going to go over well. Or if I give her and put a bunch of effort into it, the same amount of effort, but the effort does not produce a better outcome because I wrote a crappy poem because I'm not great at writing poems. But it was written for me. Becky, how does that land for you? Like if your partner or somebody like that writes you this gorgeous poem and it really just pulls at your heartstrings, you're crying, makeup's getting all messy, you're just, and then you find out it's AI, or it was generated through AI, even though I did put a bunch of effort into it. Does that bother you, matter, or like give us?
So because I am me, and I don't think like a lot of women are gonna think of it like this, but I would say like, was this the first draft? Where did it, like how advanced? Because I have written some great things. Nobody would ever know, first of all. But like, yes, I kept pushing the button. You know, So if somebody sat there for like 20 minutes with ChatGPT until they got like something beautiful, I personally wouldn't care if it was AI. But if it was like, hey, write my girlfriend a Valentine's Day poem, and that I was just getting the first draft of it, I would be like, okay, this is like low effort, bare minimum,
Rashib must
I
have
love
bribed
this.
you.
I was so unexpected.
Backdoor bribe.
It's honest though. It's honest. I'm just being
It's
honest. Yeah.
That's all we can ask for. Archie, where do you land?
I don't know about. I wonder about this. So, I guess it's kind of like, you know, you give someone a macaroni sculpture versus you buy them, you know, an equivalent dollar value gift that's like well produced and not made of macaroni.
Well, let me just change your little, just to plug, abstract away dollar and insert effort. Because I think most people care about effort, right? Like it didn't, like to Becky's point, like you didn't put a bunch of effort into it and you just stole this thing and you're trying to front like you put all this effort into it when you didn't. For me, that's the big value vector, is like how much did you care? And usually caring is a function of effort. So I'm tracking you, but like let's use effort instead of money.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. I think it's sort of like maybe the question then becomes like, how normalized is it to use this tooling? Because if it's like today, if I gave that to my girlfriend, she, you know, once I told her it's made of AI, like I'd probably get a slap in the face.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Because it's like the assumption is that that's no effort, regardless of the actuality. But in a world where everyone is using these tools and it's like, you know, it's like opening your phone and looking something up on Google or whatever, then maybe that changes, because the assumption is that, you know, this is the normal way of doing things and you put effort into using this tool. And so that itself is like a value creation or whatever.
I think people need to understand, I agree 100% with that, but I also think that like it's the responsibility of people to understand that like AI is going to be used for all these things, and not for it to write out like an entire poem for somebody, but like just to get that like initial bolt of creativity. Like give me a good topic, give me something interesting, give me something different that I can write about. Like just get like the you know, like the fire burning in my head. Like I use AI a lot because I have ADHD, so sometimes I'm just flatlining and I'm just like, I need something. And I think that should be the norm. And I don't think people should look at it like, oh, you used AI. It's like a Duncan Hines cake, you know, like yes, it could just be like the bare minimum of a Duncan Hines cake that you just, you know, throw into a pan, and then you could like, you know, spice it up and make it into a strawberry shortcake. Like, it's all, and nobody's gonna say, oh, but you use Duncan Hines. But like that you can do so much with it, and that's something that needs to be conveyed to, I guess, the general, you know, people that are not see AI as this like negative thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
By the way, you know what this rhymes with? It rhymes with, I don't know how old people. I know Rabba's how old Rabba is, but like when I was dating, like meeting people online was totally abnormal.
Yes.
And it was like very
Same.
weird, and you would never tell your friends that you met somebody online. Like that would just not be a thing. You know, it was like a weird thing that people who couldn't meet people in person did, and that's like exactly not true anymore. Like it is exactly not true. And so, yeah, Archit, to your point around like, hey, how much does it get normalized in society? I think like these things get normalized way faster than you would expect. And so, yeah, it's. By the way, Becky, your response has made me the happiest I've ever been on a Monday afternoon. No joke. It's just like I think, yeah, which is why like Alexa and I got into this very heated debate. But
well, what did Alexa say? What was her angle?
I think her and Rabba were on. I mean, Rabba, is this? I don't want to misrepresent this, but I think that they were like, hey, ultimately it is like, do you want to feel like the person put the effort in, and that's what makes the thing valuable?
Yes.
And so the idea that it's like, the idea that you learn that it was generated by AI does this thing where it like immediately reduces the effort in. And that was like the core issue. Yeah, that was the core issue.
It feels manipulative, where you're passing off work that isn't yours, et cetera, et cetera. But to be fair, I'm not on either side. I am definitely more on the side of right now, I would not disclose it was written by AI if I did write it with AI. But I think the too long didn't read for me is kind of a shit where you're talking about with online dating. There just needs to be new social contracts renegotiated.
Right.
Like people just need to realign on where you can use AI, how far you can use it. Because if you think about it, every book has an editor, or every writer that ever has written a book has an editor. And so at what point does that editor take credit? Is it 20%? Is it 30%? If they edited over 50% of the book, is it still the author's book? Yada, yada. And that's the same for me, the same thing as AI, where it's like, if I used AI, but I only used it for 10% of my poem, do I need to disclose that? And does that take away from the quote unquote originality or thoughtfulness or the things that are meaningful in a personal relationship?
By the way, we're way off the reservation. So we are not talking about marketing.
I'm just not familiar, but like, let's say with like dating apps, are people using, they've all been integrated already, right? Like, well, like most of like the social media platforms have AI, like you can write a tweet and you can just click a button and like it'll rewrite it for you, right? So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think like initially people were using that and it was like super obvious, but I think that like I never use those features because I know that it's just what it's going to give me is just going to be generic. And I think that people are starting to realize that you don't have to use the new update that has the AI already in there. It's just not going to be as good.
Yeah, no, I mean, and to land the plane, Rashid, because we are a little bit at the bounds of marketing, the way to bring it back is, do you think there's going to come, I mean, Meta, Rashid and I were talking about this, where it seems like a necessary business, but not necessarily a great business for verification, like how much, because then you get into some really weird nuances. Like at what point do you need to disclose it's AI, right? If I use some Photoshop, do I need to disclose that? If I need to do touch-ups, like, and so that's where it gets weird. But I do think there's going to come a place that AI matters. But I think the only, it's like kind of like the Supreme Court, where I think, I know it when I see it type of stuff, where I think it's going to be really interesting to see where everything lands, because I don't think it bothers me, because at the end of the day, all marketing is manipulative. Like all marketing is trying to get you to do something, but as long as it's coming from a good place that like, I know that I'm going to generate value for you if you use my product, I don't know if it really bothers me that much. The challenge is like, how do you suppress the bad actors that could, use this and weaponize this technology in a way that was previously prohibitive for them, whether it be economics. It's almost like spam, right? Like once email became super cheap, and then the same thing with SMS, like there was just such an economic incentive to spam because the numbers, like as you said earlier, Becky, like the math actually mathed, where it's like I can just hit this numbers game. It takes no time, and I just blasting people, and then finally somebody clicks my link and I can scam them. So I think that's what's going to be interesting. Is so I guess we'll round out on this, and then we'll let you guys close out with some time. But so Rashib, do you think there ever needs to be a time and place where assets that are generated with AI need to be disclosed?
I mean, I think it's just a thing you do on the path to changing the societal norm.
Okay.
Like I think you do it in the short term, and then eventually it's like.
So is the onus on the platform or the person?
Oh, the onus is like unfortunately, it's not the word that I would use. It's like,
okay.
Unfortunately, the platform has to take the responsibility because that's where all the distribution is happening.
Yes. But they're not media platforms. It's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's just super tough. I think it's super tough. Like the same thing is true for like data. Like we used to have this problem at LiveRamp where it's like, hey, what is like the provenance of the data? Like, do we know that the data was like actually secured in like a compliant way? And like, and it's just like, it's just impossible. And ultimately, like the person who is uploading the data has to like check a box and say like, hey, I verify X. And then like the platform is then the one that's taking the responsibility to like showcase that. But
so
it is like an impossibly.
Because copyright's
like
super hairy, but it's kind of same but different, where you're saying, hey, this doesn't have any copyright issues, but at the same time, I'm running it through some things with AI. No. And for people following home, provenance is just a fancy word for origin. That's the IV coming out in my boss. Archit, what do you think? Verification, no verification?
So I'm not really going to answer the question, to be honest, but I'm going to talk about two things that are interesting and sort of like related to this, if that's okay. So,
of course.
So one is like where we're using AI the most today is AI voiceovers. And so I've been kind of thinking both ethically and legally, you know, what's the line there, assuming we get, you know, permission from the person whose voice we're cloning or whatever.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
Like that's I think the base ground rule or whatever. But outside of that, it's like, do we need to be disclosing this? Well, it's like, how different is that from just hiring a UGC actor or a voice actor to run the script? The only difference is the script is now a machine reading it out instead of a person. It's still acting at the end of the day to me.
Yes. The one thing I'd push back on is the economics are totally different. And the scale is totally different because those people don't need to eat. They don't need to sleep. And so I can use $1,000 and get X amount of AI videos, and I can use $1,000 and get one video. And so there still is
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but there's still a forcing function is what I'm saying, in terms of like, it's still cost prohibitive to spam with UGC. Whereas with AI, it's not, or not as much.
I think that scale gets really gray. Like if you're paying $100 for a UGC video, or you're paying $2 for a Fiverr voiceover from, you know, someone in Indonesia or something, it's like, how different is that from paying $25 to Creatify to generate one AI video? It's actually cheaper to go get today go get the UGC voiceover. So I don't know if, like, to me, economics play into it as much as I think velocity is the big thing.
Right.
But I think for us, like where we've kind of landed is like, hey, if it's a voiceover and we've cloned someone's voice in a compliant way, then no one needs to know it's a machine voiceover, because it's sort of like saying, hey, this was an actor who we paid to do this UGC video. It's like everyone kind of knows it's an ad. Like no one's out here thinking that, you know, you're shaking your head and dandruff's flying everywhere and that's like a real video. You just whatever it is. So that's like the one way I've been thinking about it today. The other is I think sort of like uncanny valley is like where I'd stay away from. So there's like two ways to use AI today. One is like it's super real, like the voiceovers, like anything from 11 Labs, it's so real you can't even tell. Great, use it. The other is like it's super obviously AI, like the Guru Nanda TikTok videos. Again, like great, use it, it'll work. Where you're kind of putting your brand at risk is like in the middle 80%, where it's like that sort of looks like LeBron James, but his teeth are moving differently than I expect, and it's kind of like uncanny. Is it real? Is it not real? Like that I would stay away from. And usually the messy middle is sort of where you get into all the legal and ethical questions. So just stay out of it. Just stay in like one or the other corner and you're probably good to go.
Yeah, no, the uncanny valley, that's a good reference. Okay, Becky, let me know what you think about verification and then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, no, so I actually didn't think about this till I had my video go viral, and I think it went viral because it was so realistic and unexpected that people almost didn't know. And that was the whole debate. The whole debate from the AI community was like, this is not AI. And I was like, for your like regular average audience, this is AI, because this person did not actually make this ad. This person did not actually say it, right? So like, you have to be very careful, because like the AI people are gonna keep pushing that something that's a deep fake or a voice, just like a sync, like a whatever, they're gonna argue that that's not AI. But like, it's important to let people know that AI is just like an overall like name for a technology, and there's like a lot of layers for it. But at the end of the day, there's real and there's not real. So I think what's eventually going to happen is like we have had with influencers, where if something was an ad, it would just say like ad or sponsored, and then like consumers just got used to it, and I think that's how it's eventually going to evolve.
That's a really good parallel, the influencer stuff and the ad stuff. Okay, before we wrap up, Becky, what's your favorite AI tool right now?
Claude and Perplexity.
Oh, Perplexity is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, you got 3?
And FERMÁT.
Hey, let's go. Look at the plug. Archit, what's your favorite tool? AI tool.
We're using 11 Labs like by far the most. Like probably majority, 75 to 90% of our ads now are 11 Lab voiceovers. So it's got to be that one, just because we're in it every day.
Love it. Rashib, what's your most used or favorite AI tool?
I'm a sucker. I just use ChatGPT right now.
Yeah.
I just like, and I use it just for experiments. It's like, oh, I have this random idea. I wonder if, and then just, see what comes of it.
Amazing. Becky, where can the people follow you? How can they buy some Get Dirties? This time is yours.
Sure. Thank you. GetDirty.shop is our website. We're also on Amazon. Hopefully you'll find us in retail in September. And I do a lot of like just personal branding. I talk about like just everything that it takes to start a brand. So if you're interested in that, that's definitely Twitter, and it's Becky Litvin across all social media platforms.
Archit, are you guys taking clients? How can people work with you? How can people follow you? This time's yours, my friend.
Yeah, I'd say reach out on LinkedIn, Twitter. I love to chat all things marketing and figure out if we're a good fit, if that makes sense, or just no pressure. Let's chop it up on ads and AI.
Amazing. What's your Twitter handle?
Archit Batlaw with 2 T's.
Amazing. Oh,
someone get Archit Batlaw.
Come on, people. Come on, Elon. Rashib, what are you working on? What are you excited about? How can the people follow you? Your LinkedIn content is kind of catching fire. I thought I was the good-looking guy. His beard's better than mine. I thought I was the memer. His memes are better than mine. I thought I was going to be the influencer, and this guy's blown up on LinkedIn. I can't win with this guy. How can people follow you? How can people get in touch? Let the people know.
I'm Rishabh MJN on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and my only ask is come and watch Whiteboard Wednesdays.
Yes,
that's the most useful. That's the most useful thing I do at this company. So
they're actually very good, and it's really interesting because they're basically
there's a sneak peek of one.
Let's go! Oh, look at this breaking news! It's really interesting because he basically does no prep. We tried to get him to like prep and do, because we have a whole content calendar and everything. He's like, nah, it's just the stream of consciousness. He just blacks out and then wakes up and he has a Whiteboard Wednesday done. So go check them out. They're all on our LinkedIns, though will be on our YouTubes. And then if you are not on our newsletter, we have a phenomenal newsletter that goes out every Friday called The Geometry of Growth, curated by the indomitable Alexa Kilroy, our director of marketing. And then if you do want to amp up your ads and make them more effective, experiment more, all the things, we're FERMATcommerce.com. Go book a demo, go make my boss happy. Becky, Archit, amazing combo. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
We did 128. 128 was the top number, so we have some peak numbers to go after. Bishop,
Cool.
thank you so much, as always, for not only hiring me, but just being such a top floor boss. Really good human over there. All right, folks, that's it. That's another seminar series in the books. This will also be on the YouTube. Yeah, thank you for participating, Jesse. That was amazing. Really want to get more crowd participation in this. These are usually every Monday. There's some travel going on right now because it's travel season. So we're going to try and keep these as uniform as possible every Monday. But
Get the wipes for the travel.
get
Great
the
for
wipes for the
traveling.
travel. I have one, and they are amazing.
Good.
You guys should
Yeah.
get some too. Get dirty. Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see
Thanks,
everyone on the
guys.
flip, and go follow and go make all that money. Peace.
Okay, thank you. Bye.